While cleaning, I accidentally found a pearl earring from the crack in the bed. It wasn't mine. I took a photo and posted it on my friend's circle. Whose pearl earring is this that I found in the crack of my bed? Come claim it. Spencer called me soon after, and he scolded me in a low voice. It's just that Xanda dropped it when she sent me home, and you made it public. It's really impolite. Xanda was also sobbing and echoed. I took a picture wearing this earring, and she posted it like that. How can I face people? If it were before, I would definitely question him about why another woman's things would be on our bed. But now I'm tired, I just said lightly. Then return it to the owner, including Spencer. I said in my heart. 1. Yvonne, why did you post that on your friend circle? If you have any questions, just ask me. Everyone in the company is saying that she's a widow, and there's a lot of gossip. And she cried in my office for an entire afternoon. Is this what you want? After cleaning up the house on the weekend, I had just sat down to rest when Spencer came in and started questioning me. My whole body ached, and I glanced at the jewelry box on the table, and the pearl earring was lying inside. I pushed it forward, dared to do it but not dare to admit it. Didn't she lose an earring? I found it, so I just told her. My temples throbbed, and I had a terrible headache. Spencer still wouldn't give up. It was unintentional. Why are you making such a fuss? Xanda has been wrong today. If you still have a little conscience, you should go to our company and apologize to her in front of everyone, instead of pretending nothing happened. I couldn't understand how he could be so righteous and blame me from a moral high ground. Xanda can't be wronged, so I have to wrong myself and apologize? There are so many rooms in the house. Why did she have to sleep in our bed if she was so tired? But now I don't want to get entangled with Spencer anymore. I just said calmly, Spencer, let's get a divorce. The moment I said it, I felt a lot more relaxed. Spencer was slightly stunned. Then he reacted and strode over to me, his face full of anger. Yvonne, do you mean you would rather get a divorce than apologize to Xanda? Think whatever you want. I stood up and wanted to go back to the room to rest, but I was pulled back by a strong force. Spencer squeezed my chin hard and said fiercely, You begged me to marry you back then, and now you can't leave without my consent. After saying that, he slammed the door and left. The pain from my chin hadn't subsided, and my heart ached too. In high school, Spencer was the class monitor, and I was a poor student in the class. Maybe it was out of the responsibility of being a class monitor. He would often quietly take care of my timid and sensitive self-esteem. I never ate in the cafeteria, but every day he would seemingly unintentionally pass me an egg. I bought too much, I can't finish it, it's for you. Under Spencer's feeding, I began to pluck up the courage to help him fetch water and do chores. The relationship between people slowly established itself in this back and forth. At that time, someone in the class said that we were dating, and in order to avoid suspicion, I took the initiative to alienate him, but he found me and said, Yvonne, don't care too much about what others think, just be yourself. Later, I realized that from the first time Spencer handed me an egg, he was like a ray of sunshine in the morning, forcefully breaking into my heart. In the second year of high school, Xanda transferred in, and her beautiful and bright appearance instantly became the focus of the whole school. Spencer was no exception. In the second semester of high school, someone anonymously reported Spencer and Xanda, and the head teacher caught them both in the woods. Xanda's parents were so embarrassed that they quickly transferred her to another school and changed all her contact information. Spencer's academic performance also plummeted, and the original Tsinghua seedling ended up going to the same 985 university as Yvonne. Everyone was saying that I was jealous and reported it to the teacher, and I didn't want to be misunderstood by Spencer, so I took the initiative to explain to him. But he glanced at me and said, Yvonne, you don't need to explain to me. Don't I know what kind of person you are? At that time, I naively thought that 7 years of companionship would be enough for Spencer to forget that short-lived first love. But until now, I realized how wrong I was. How can sweet and bitter youthful memories be forgotten so easily? Just like I can't forget Spencer, he can't forget Xanda either. 2. After that argument, Spencer didn't come home for several days, but I knew his schedule perfectly well. Xanda posted on her friend's circle, that Spencer stayed up several nights to write a loving food ordering app to make her happy, and every day he would order the dishes she wanted to eat. And the next day Spencer would deliver her a loving takeaway. Spencer also went night hiking with her, just because Xandha casually said she wanted to see the first rays of sunlight in the morning. Xandha was like a peacock that had successfully courted, showing off her spoils without reservation. I remember that Spencer was busy with work and rarely cooked, so I made dinner every day and sent it to his company. As for night climbing or night running, it was impossible, because that was the time to catch up on sleep. Even when I asked him to go downstairs with me to eat late-night snacks, he refused. If it were before, I would definitely have a big fight with Spencer, but now I just swiped indifferently and put my phone aside to continue working. The result of this work directly determines whether I can get the opportunity to be sent abroad, so I can't take it lightly. I don't know how long I've been busy, but when I looked up, my colleagues' desks were all empty. I picked up my phone to order takeout, but Spencer appeared in my company for the first time, and he opened the takeout box as if nothing had happened. You can't forget to eat even if you're working. If I hadn't passed by today, would you be starving again? I looked down at the food in the box, a bowl of fried rice covered with a few pieces of vegetables and eggplant, and I lost my appetite. I'm not hungry. Yvonne, when are you going to change your temper? Spencer frowned. I've already given you a step down. Can't we just take a step back and live a good life? He's always like this. Every time he feels guilty, he will take the initiative to give me a little sweetness, and I will choose to swallow all the grievances for the sake of family stability. This time was no exception, but after 7 years of relationship, Spencer was also really good to me. I admit that I'm not so open-minded. After hesitating for a few seconds, I was still moved by his words about living a good life. I looked up at him and said, "Then can you cut off contact with Xandha?" It was such a simple request that it made Spencer slam the table angrily. She entered the company through her own ability, and it was the company's arrangement for her to become the docking specialist of our group. What qualifications do I have as a small programmer to fire her? If you are so jealous, just lock me up at home and earn money to support the family yourself. After saying that, he threw the takeout box on the table into the trash can and left without looking back. I looked at Spencer's back and sneered. What he didn't know was that I had long known that he had been promoted to the core group leader, and even someone with Xandha's academic qualifications could enter the company because he strongly promoted it. As for such a trivial matter as a docking specialist, the company could naturally agree to him. The whole industry is saying that Spencer and Xandha have an unusual relationship, and he always lightly covers it up with the identity of an old classmate, trying to suppress the rumors. But he forgot that no one who can work in a top 10 company in the country is a fool. After this incident, I don't seem to feel so regretful anymore. They say that when you're feeling depressed, you should look into the distance. So I walked to the window and looked around, and sure enough, I saw Xandha standing at the door of the co-pilot, carrying something downstairs. She seemed to sense where I was and pecked Spencer on the face provocatively, quickly getting into the car. And Spencer just touched his lips and smiled indulgently. The remaining love in my heart was gradually lost, leaving only a bloody wound. The cold wind blew cold and piercing. The next second my phone rang, and it was Xandha. Doesn't it feel bad to see your husband being unfaithful with your own eyes? 3. My knuckles turned white as I gripped my phone, as if a giant hand was squeezing my throat. I typed tremblingly, "What's there to be proud of? A mistress who's not worthy of being on the stage." The moment the message was sent successfully, I took a deep breath and returned to my workstation, gulping down a full glass of ice water. Xandha's abusive messages came one after another, so I simply blocked her, and the world became much quieter. On my way home by car, maybe because I didn't have lunch, my stomach ached. When I got home, I forced my aching body to cook noodles in the kitchen. The white thick soup was rolling, and my memory was suddenly pulled back to my sophomore year. At that time, the winter flu was breaking out, and I was unfortunately infected. After taking the medicine and lying in bed to rest, my mind was full of thick pork bone soup. Before I could swallow, Spencer sent me a message. "Baby, I'm downstairs in your dormitory building. I brought you some pork bone soup." A huge joy surged in my heart, and I quickly put on my coat and rushed downstairs. What I saw was him carefully taking out a thermos from his arms. "It's cold outside, but I've been holding it in my arms all the way. You take it upstairs and drink it while it's hot." The upper bunk was covered with thick snow, but my heart was warm. Spencer stretched out his frostbitten fingers and urged me to go back to the dormitory. Until now, I still remember the way he stood in the snow and watched me leave. The splashing hot soup pulled my thoughts back to reality. When I raised my hand to look, there was a big blister. Just as I was about to turn around to deal with it, the door behind me was suddenly pulled open, and Spencer walked in angrily, a gust of wind hitting my face. The air seemed to stagnate, and Spencer's face in front of me overlapped with the boy in my memory and quickly separated. 7 years, Spencer's appearance hasn't changed much, but I know his heart has changed. He sneered. "Yvonne, I didn't expect you to be so vicious. Do you know that Xandha wanted to end her life because of your words? And she's only out of danger now." My face was burning hot, and my mind was blank. I looked back blankly. "What are you talking about?" Spencer threw a chat screenshot in front of me. "You've done so many bad things, you don't know which one I'm talking about, do you? Open your eyes and have a good look." I took it and looked at it. It said, "Xandha, are you addicted to being a mistress? Something that's not worthy of being on the stage. If you can't bear to be lonely, you might as well go and be a prostitute. You can both enjoy yourself and make money. Is it interesting to keep pestering Spencer, a married man? Why don't I find someone to let you taste the taste of selling yourself?" The screen was full of dirty words, but I never said them. I shook my head and denied. "It wasn't me." But Spencer couldn't listen at all. He grabbed my hand and walked out. "If you do something wrong, you have to admit it. You go to the hospital to apologize to Xandha now." "Why should I apologize?" I resisted desperately, and the hot soup was overturned in the struggle, spilling all over me, making me tremble with pain. Spencer looked coldly at my swollen wound. "Look, even heaven can't stand it. It can't wait to punish you." After saying that, he no longer insisted on me going to the hospital to apologize to Xandha, but took out his phone to take pictures. The flash blinded my eyes, and he laughed lightly and sent a voice message. "Xandha, look at her. Doesn't she look like the pitiful wretch in the storybook who no one wants?" Spencer didn't look at me anymore and turned to leave. After a while, I received a strange call, and Xandha's triumphant voice came from the other end. "Yvonne, you're so pitiful. I just cut my skin a little, and Spencer was so nervous." It's not in vain for me to deceive him. Back then you reported me to the teacher and caused my parents to take me back to my hometown, and finally married a man I didn't like. And now, just relying on a few chat records, he can do so much for me. Admit it, you're just a tool for him to pass the time. Even if you give him another 7 years, you won't get his heart. I used to think that Spencer felt sorry for Xandha because she married the wrong person, so I moved with compassion, but I didn't expect Spencer to actually believe her nonsense. The Spencer who told me he believed me under the old banyan tree has changed after all. I suddenly became curious. What would Spencer's expression be if he knew that the pure and flawless first love in his heart was actually a woman full of lies? Thinking of this, I endured the pain and sent a message to my lawyer. "I've made up my mind. Please draft a divorce agreement for me as soon as possible." 4. I was burnt and had acute gastroenteritis, so the doctor asked me to stay in the hospital for observation. But my work was urgent, and I didn't want to give up this opportunity, so I had to bring my laptop to the ward to work. My boss received a notification that the previously confirmed partner had a problem, and a new partner company's staff would come to meet with me in a while. After a while, the sound of high heels came closer and closer, and it was Xandha who pushed the door open. She looked me up and down, then covered her mouth and sneered. "Yvonne, look at you now. What else do you want to compete with me for? Aren't you trying to interfere with Spencer's work and keep him away from me? I won't let you. To tell you the truth, I fought for the opportunity to work with your company, just to annoy you." My hand clenched suddenly, but thinking of the importance of the project, I still suppressed my anger. Are you finished? If you're finished, let's talk about work. If you annoy me, you won't be able to explain it when you go back, will you? I used the company as my backing, and Xantha reluctantly shut her mouth. Because there were many professional terms, and Xantha couldn't understand them. The content that could have been communicated in an hour was dragged out for 4 hours. I was parched, but the water kettle in the ward was empty. Just as I was about to get up, Spencer came in with a cup of coffee. Why did it take so long? We have to go back to the company later. The only coffee was naturally placed in front of Xantha. She pouted and acted coquettishly. Yvonne talked about all the professional terms. I don't understand, but I really want to do this job well. So I can only humbly ask her for advice, so. Hearing this, Spencer's face darkened, and his tone also became colder. Yvonne, are you deliberately making things difficult for Xantha? You know she just joined the company and doesn't understand many things. Can't you just tell her simply? Bullying newcomers just because you have experience. Has your upbringing been eaten by dogs? Or has no one ever taught you? I could get used to Spencer's cold words, but I could never allow anyone to slander my parents. They had exhausted all their efforts to support me through school, and Spencer's words were undoubtedly slapping me and my parents in the face. I supported myself on the table and stood up, looking directly into his eyes. In that case, your company should send an experienced staff member to take over, instead of such a clueless newbie. Or is it that your company doesn't attach importance to this project at all, so you deliberately sent such a person over? In the past, I was too concerned about face, which allowed Spencer and Xantha to become even more arrogant. Now that I was directly exposed, a flash of panic flashed in Spencer's eyes, and then he explained, how could we not attach importance to this project? We are all old classmates, and Xantha volunteered to take this opportunity to repair the relationship with you. By the way, Xantha has also forgiven you for what happened last time. As long as you take her to complete the work well, she will have a resume that she can present. In Spencer's eyes, my existence seemed to be just a stepping stone for Xantha. Before, Spencer asked me to participate in the sports meet on behalf of Xantha. And in the end, it was Xantha who stood on the podium. During the English listening test, Xantha forgot to wear her headphones, and he begged me to lend her my headphones. Xantha's score exceeded mine that time. One by one, those memories that had been forgotten in the back of my mind surfaced, and I suddenly realized, but this time I won't be as stupid as before. Spencer, you're so used to taking advantage of others. This project has a short deadline and is very important. If Xantha's performance is still like this during the next follow-up, I don't think she can handle this job, and I will apply to change people then. After saying that, I ignored him and turned to get some water. Yvonne, no wonder you don't have many friends. Spencer's angry voice came from behind. If you can be as magnanimous as Xantha, you wouldn't be so lonely. I couldn't help but laugh. Programmers need to stare at computers all year round, and it's common to not have time to eat when they encounter bugs to fix. Spencer's stomach has been bad for a long time. If I hadn't gone home to cook every day and sent it over to personally watch him finish it, I'm afraid he would have collapsed several times. Now that I hear his heartfelt words, it's good. I won't do it anymore in the future. 5. During my recovery, the divorce agreement was also drafted, and I had it delivered to Spencer's hand by a same-city courier. This time he didn't make me wait long, took a leave of absence and rushed to the hospital. And the first thing he said when he entered the door was, Yvonne, you know I never play hard to get. I advise you not to play with fire. Having loved Spencer for so long, he had the confidence to say that. In his heart, even if I tortured each other until we were old, I wouldn't choose to leave him. Spencer's voice was too loud, attracting many onlookers to stretch their necks and look inside. I had no choice but to ask him to close the door before speaking. Sitting on the edge of the bed, he noticed my hand and asked, "How is your injury healing?" I quickly pulled down my sleeve to cover it and said indifferently, "Much better." He had seen it last time, but because he was afraid of Xantha getting angry, he wouldn't ask any more questions. Today Xantha was not around, so he could spare some time to love me. But a person can't have their cake and eat it too. I was not moved by his favor and asked expressionlessly, "Do you have any objections to the property distribution?" Seeing that I was still determined to get a divorce, the expression on Spencer's face could no longer be calm. He grabbed my shoulder tightly and asked unwillingly, "Yvonne, are you serious? 7 years of relationship, are you really willing to divorce me?" I nodded as an answer. The room fell into a strange silence. Spencer slowly raised his head, his eyes full of bloodshot. "Are you insisting on a divorce because of Xanda? I clearly explained to you that I just helped an old classmate. Why are you still so persistent?" Seeing that Spencer wouldn't admit defeat unless he saw the coffin, I didn't intend to beat around the bush. "Where were you on our wedding anniversary? Didn't I tell you? I was working overtime at the company. What's there to doubt? The company still has my check-in records. Can I show them to you?" Spencer did this, so even if there were no records, he could create them out of thin air. Even if he could produce evidence, it wouldn't matter. What he didn't know was that Xanda had already betrayed him completely. Last time Xanda came to me to discuss work, she was wearing a sparkling diamond ring on her middle finger, and she said, "The broken diamond you gave me on our wedding anniversary is a gift from the one on my hand. Look, isn't it much prettier than yours?" At that time, I just felt absurd, giving the mistress the real thing and letting my wife wear the gift. The pros and cons were too clear. Spencer actually humiliated me to this extent. I chuckled. "You took Xanda to go shopping that day, and you bought a ring for her and one for me, right?" From Spencer's shocked expression, I got a silent answer. Seeing his lie exposed, he pretended that something urgent had come up at the company and fled in embarrassment. Actually, what I cared about was not the diamond ring, but the balance that was gradually tilting in his heart. For years ago, Spencer's parents both died in an accident, and when we rushed to the hospital, we didn't even get to see them one last time. He collapsed on the ground and cried out to me. He said he only had me and told me to never leave him. I naturally nodded in agreement. After finishing the funeral, he was extremely insecure, and at dinner, he used only a pull tab to propose to me, and amidst the cheers of everyone, I tearfully agreed. After 3 years of mourning, Spencer's work also picked up, and we finally had the long-awaited wedding. After marriage, Spencer wanted to make up for the engagement ring he owed me when he was down, and he would give me gifts in different ways on every wedding anniversary. He didn't know that in my eyes, this pull-tab ring was even more precious than all the gifts he had given me later. Until now, it's still in a separate compartment in my jewelry box. But this love was also ended with the return of Xanda. Later, I realized the destructive power of so-called first love through his repeated partiality. I lost completely. 6. Since receiving the divorce papers, Spencer has been appearing in my sight frequently. He came to pick me up when I was discharged from the hospital, and the house was spotless. There was hot food on the table as soon as I entered the door. I didn't give him a good face in response to his expectant boast, because I know that all the beauty in front of me will return to its original form once I choose to forgive. Spencer and I are destined to separate. Xanda also seemed to have really put in the effort, and she no longer showed a confused expression during subsequent work. Everything seemed to be going smoothly. As long as the project can be successfully completed, and I can get the overseas assignment, I don't care whether Xanda can go further. Just when I thought I was about to succeed, something went wrong at the seminar. Xanda arrived late on purpose, and the plan she gave me was completely different from what was required in the plan. It was almost the opposite. The slideshow had already started, and I had to admit with a stiff neck that it was my own negligence, and I took the wrong U-disc. Rex, the president of the client company, and his team thought I had wasted their time, became furious, and stood up to leave. At the most embarrassing moment, Xanda took out the real U-disc. "I'm sorry, President Rex. I made Plan B before I left, and I also have a copy of the version we discussed earlier." Watching her talk eloquently in front of the projection, I was so angry that I trembled. I had worked wholeheartedly to complete the work, but Xanda blatantly took away the fruits of my labor, and no one would feel good about it. After the meeting, my boss passed by me and took a deep look at me. and finally left without saying anything. I still let him down. Closing the laptop, I was about to get up and leave when Xandha folded her arms and walked triumphantly in front of me. Yvonne, this is the difference between us. You can only rely on your own day and night efforts, while I have Spencer behind me. Look, I just played a little trick, and all your efforts in this period have come to nothing. I have to admit, Xandha's trick of stealing the beam and changing the post could really make me lose this overseas opportunity, and she can step up another level on my flesh and blood. I gritted my teeth and tried to suppress my emotions. Why? She sneered. Why? Do you still have the face to ask why? That time we met at the hospital, weren't you still clamoring to replace me? I also want you to taste the taste of being bullied. Your love and career, I want them all. Hearing Xandha's words, I really regretted not insisting on replacing her after that meeting, which pushed me to this situation. It's too late to regret. I was red-eyed and asked with trembling lips, how could that be? But Spencer clearly told me that you were just. Xandha couldn't wait to interrupt. Just what? Just old classmates? How only a fool like you would believe that. And I don't mind telling you, we've been hooking up for a long time, and even the idea today was given to me by him. Unable to accept the shock of the truth, I staggered back and hurriedly turned to run out of the conference room. After closing the office door, I took off the recording pen. After working in the workplace for many years, I have always kept in mind the principle of leaving traces of everything. And Xandha was obviously too happy. 7. The client wasn't particularly satisfied with the last plan, and they raised many more questions after the meeting. But this time, I didn't connect with Xandha anymore. Before the project deadline, I organized a final seminar. Just when she thought her plan would be selected, I started the presentation with the latest plan. This time I bypassed Spencer and worked with his competitor, Preston, to improve the plan. Two ambitious people hit it off immediately, and Preston stayed up several nights to finally find and fix all the bugs. The final result was unexpectedly good. As soon as the presentation was finished, the audience applauded, and my boss nodded frequently. I finally regained recognition. At the celebration banquet, Spencer followed me around like a little tail, and I was so annoyed that I asked him to go out and buy hangover medicine. During this gap, Xandha staggered onto the stage drunk. With tears in her eyes, she said, "First of all, let's give the warmest applause to Yvonne for successfully winning the project. But I also want to ask her, since the two companies are cooperating, why are you being so secretive and not sharing information? You even found someone else. Leaking commercial secrets is a crime." She deliberately made the situation sound very serious, and everyone present looked at each other, not expecting Xandha to reveal it so bluntly. All eyes were on me, and she didn't know that this was what I was waiting for. Even if she didn't say it Judong Soa, the recording of the subsequent lottery draw would be exposed. Facing Xandha's provocative gaze, I calmly walked to the computer and logged into my email. Our company is used to working through email. I said this at the beginning if Ms. Xandha could open her email and take a look, there wouldn't be such a big misunderstanding. In the sent emails, Xandha's name was clearly listed. As early as the first communication, I found that what she wanted was for me to report everything to her subordinates in detail. And she didn't even look at the organized emails. Faced with irrefutable evidence, Xandha had no choice but to change the subject. Then why did you ask someone else to modify it? What if he leaks it? I took the microphone. Ms. Xandha, you know how tight the schedule is. I waited for 2 days, and you still couldn't give me a result. And Preston is also a member of Spencer's team. So what's wrong with me asking him? Xandha was speechless and turned to run away, but I called out to her. Ms. Xandha, since we've already said so much, I don't want to endure it anymore. The screen went dark, and the recording of that day's conversation played on the speakers. As soon as Xandha's arrogant and domineering voice came out, the truth was revealed. When Spencer came back, he saw Xandha running out crying, covering her face. He didn't chase after her, but handed the medicine to me awkwardly. He asked cautiously, "Yvonne, what happened?" Before I could answer, Spencer was called away by the HR manager, and after a while, he suddenly shouted, "Yvonne, you dare to stab me in the back? I work hard every day. Isn't it for your better life? But you don't appreciate it, and you even make me look bad in public. Don't you want a divorce? I'll sign it now." The security guards quickly controlled Spencer, and his voice gradually faded away, and the atmosphere became warm again. The company can operate normally without a programmer, and Yvonne can do the same without Spencer. No, I'll only get better and better. 8. The divorce process was smoother than I expected. After signing, Spencer and I entered the divorce cooling-off period. Preston, through his own efforts, successfully became the new group leader. I also successfully obtained a 3-year overseas study qualification. When I was shopping for groceries at the supermarket, I ran into Spencer and Xandha. The two of them stood in front of the shelf picking out goods like a newlywed couple. I pretended not to see them and turned the shopping cart to walk in another direction. Unexpectedly, Xandha chased after me, and she stroked her belly. "Yvonne, you haven't been able to get pregnant for 7 years, but I've been pregnant for so long. Why don't you go to the hospital to check your fertility?" It is said that pregnant women are all shrouded in the glow of motherhood, but Xandha's face was particularly ugly. Since she had no shame, I didn't need to give her face. I shouted loudly, "Everyone come and see! My husband and I are still in the divorce cooling-off period, and the mistress has come to provoke me." More and more people gathered around, and they couldn't help but point fingers at Xandha, which made her stomp her feet angrily. Spencer stepped forward and whispered in Xandha's ear, "Why are you provoking her for no reason?" Then he grabbed Xandha's hand and slipped out of the crowd, bowing his head and running away. The little episode didn't affect my mood. Time flew by, and it was the last day of the cooling-off period. I met Spencer at the Civil Affairs Bureau. His hair had grown to cover his eyes, and his chin was covered with stubble. He was no longer the spirited man he used to be. It seemed that Xandha's pregnancy had taken a toll on him. Seeing me, Spencer suddenly said coldly, "Is this how you have taken care of me for 7 years? Are you tired?" Tired? Maybe I would be tired too. But Yvonne at that time was immersed in Spencer's love and enjoyed it. What he didn't know was that the lost pearl earring was not the first time Xandha had provoked me. Before that, there was lipstick on the co-pilot's seat, brown curly hair on the sofa. My love for him was exhausted little by little in these little things. In the end, I still didn't answer his question, but just said softly, "Let's go, it's almost our turn." I don't know if it was an illusion, but I heard Spencer sigh heavily. When confirming the signature, I don't know what Spencer was thinking, but he hesitated to put down his pen. I was afraid that he would change his mind and urged him out loud, "Sign it, Xandha's child can't wait." I was so excited that my hands were shaking when I got the divorce certificate. After posting it on my friend's circle, I officially returned to single life. 3 days later, I dragged 2 suitcases and boarded a plane to a foreign country. Studying abroad, I was no longer as inferior and lonely as before, but quickly became one with my colleagues. All kinds of theoretical knowledge I had never heard before kept pouring into my mind, and I was like a dry sponge thrown into the sea, gaining a lot every day. While working that day, my phone kept vibrating. When I had lunch, I remembered and opened it. It turned out to be a message from Spencer. 9. I only skimmed through the 99+ messages, and they basically said that he was deceived by Xandha. Apparently, after Spencer was fired from the company, he hit a wall everywhere, and almost no company was willing to hire him. Finally, he found a small company, but during the pre-employment physical examination, the doctor told him that his body had already been overdrawn, and he even suffered from asthenospermia, with a 0.001% chance of sperm implantation. After repeated questioning, he finally learned the secret that Xandha had been hiding. Xandha's child belonged to the former vice president of the company. The two had been hooking up before Xandha was widowed, but the vice president had a family, so they decided after discussion to let him be a scapegoat. On the surface, Spencer was Xandha's old classmate and the male protagonist in the peach-colored scandal. In private, Xandha was the vice president's mistress, getting both money and sex. Originally, the 3 of them lived in peace, but unexpectedly, Spencer couldn't forget Xantha. And after spending time together day and night, they crossed the final line. During the argument, Spencer also learned the truth about being reported from Xantha's mouth. It turned out that Xantha's roommate picked up the note Spencer wrote, and she, who had always looked down on Xantha, handed the note to the Student Affairs office. And as his former rumored girlfriend, I naturally became the best scapegoat. Xantha broke the jar and spilled the beans, telling Spencer all the truth before she left. The chat records were forged by her and her friend, and the so-called ending her own life was also self-directed, and Spencer lost his job because she didn't read the email. Finally, she didn't forget to mock him for being the biggest fool in the world. At this point, I didn't want to look any further, but it started to rain outside, so I had to wait for the rain to stop in the store. After thinking about it, I propped my chin with one hand and continued to scroll down the screen. Unlike the previous revelations, the rest were mostly confessions. Spencer said, "I was so angry that I killed Xantha. It was all her fault for ruining our happy life. Yvonne, I know I'll never see you in this life, so I have to say these words. Thank you for accompanying me from the age of 16 to 26. I've seen all your efforts over the years, but I took it for granted and kept asking you to give in. And I forgot that you also have your own needs. 3 years of knowing each other, 7 years of love, is enough for me to spend the rest of my life in prison. I owe you an apology. Perhaps true letting go is always silent." I read it calmly, and I thought I would be sad, but there was not a ripple in my heart. Spencer pushed all the blame for cheating onto Xantha. Actually, compared to Xantha, whom I hadn't seen for many years, he, as my bedmate, was the one who hurt me the most. The damage has been done, and an apology is useless. I won't forgive him just because he apologized, never. The rain outside gradually stopped, and I paid the bill and stepped out of the restaurant. At this time, a tall, blonde, muscular man appeared vaguely in front of me. He spoke in not-so-fluent English and asked, "Beautiful lady, may I have the honor of knowing your name?"